Hello there. It is I. Now, the Season 2 of Andor can rightly brag of plenty of thrill. I should even say that on the whole, the highs of this season outclass the highs of 3 years ago, despite those two having been quite impressive. So far, the grandiose culmination of the Gorman protest massacre, in so many respects, character and plot, was delivered with the finesse and nuance it deserved. Then the video message from Bix as a punch to the gut on top. What I'm saying is, arc number 3 ended most sensibly and in a way rather spectacular. But we were blessed with 4 arcs. Yep, the second season did not end there, which I'm now beginning to think was not to its benefit. Now, Luthen did need an ending, I suppose. Dedra did. Clea did. Partagaz probably did. Lonnie? Maybe. Every character with a story should ideally get a resolution of a sort. That much I don't contest, and the popular sentiment is that these endings need to be respectful when it comes to those characters we, the viewer, have respect for. Which is, in part, what may have gone wrong. Luthen's death arc annoyed me greatly. It is broken from the off in episode 10 to the very end. Let's start at the off. Lonnie rings the emergency bell. Luthen meets up with him, learns of the Death Star and the coming Dedra, kills the guy, goes back to burn his shop. So far, so good. Then he's disposing of evidence that might lead directly to the rebels and specifically there on Coruscant, the hideout, and Clea, now supposed to be hiding out in it, as he's told her. He knows Dedra is coming for him, but in destroying his workplace he makes no haste. And while at it, he hears a chime at the front door and comes down to open it. Why? For one, it precludes him from properly getting rid of potential leads, in particular the transmitter to the hideout. Why did he come down? Is he retarded? No, he could not have not known that it was an Imperial agent. He could not have thought it was Clea or someone he actually wanted to see. He sees an Imperial uniform over the video feed, which he absolutely must have in the setup of his own store. Moreover, he knows Imperials are coming after him this second. What gives? So that is strike 1. Instead of finishing the work he absolutely must do, he leaves it and endangers Clea and every other allied rebel out there. The 2 pieces of questionable provenance is a clever line, but I'm not sure what the purpose of this conversation is anyways. What does Luthen stand to gain from it? Clearly, he thinks there may be a chance she's not here to detain him. He takes on his persona, he drops it only once she herself reveals the star path unit. But hey, at least Luthen always has a quick, pre-planned way out, because his stupid live head, if acquired by the Empire, holds enough information in it to bury the rebels in their cradle. He knows he cannot be taken alive under any circumstances, so it is okay, isn't it? Sure, he did put himself in a position now where he must kill himself, where that had not necessarily been a must before he opened that door, but at least that latter part is all taken care of, right? Quite likely a false tooth with the space poison, or some other really quick, really effective way to initiate own death. In fact, a tiny little thermal detonator would send his rebel guts across the room, possibly along with Dedra's. A win-win. He then briefly and pointlessly discusses with her the spread of the rebellion, and that they'll never find them. And she informs him that they'll pry all that useful intel out of him with ease. Then, thankfully, she turns around and Luthen clumsily stabs himself with a ceremonial knife, doesn't die, and is carried away in a stretcher. How silly. How utterly silly. In stark contrast with Luthen's thorough characterization as a very unsilly man. A man with a plan. In this case, not only have I not a clue as to what the big idea was talking to her, I now need to rewatch every one of his past scenes, knowing that he doesn't have a reliable way to give up the ghost to protect the galaxy when captured. That is strike 2. Now let us examine this from Ms. Miro's perspective. Dedra waltzes into what is presumed to be the main base of operations for Axis. She knows Axis is behind it all. She has a personal vendetta against him, and she, a clever character, cannot possibly underestimate the man, himself the heart of the rebellion. He must be crafty, intelligent, well-equipped, and with a level of foresight. All of which Luthen, of course, is, just not in this moment. But that doesn't stop Dedra from failing anyway. She walks in knowing whom she's up against. Walks in alone, assuming that Luthen would not suspect the actual reason of her being there. Fair enough. She then proceeds to explain to him what she is, negating her potential leverage, which she shouldn't have anyhow, as Luthen has been warned. But she does just that, thinking not even once that the main man behind everything will necessarily want to kill himself to protect his comrades. That is not the Dedra I know. That is not the calculating, entirely sound-minded Dedra we've been shown throughout. It is a silly Dedra, and even that is outsmarted by the silly version of Luthen for unsound thematic reasons. Oh, and also plot reasons. It won't do to have him captured alive, no sir. Sure, Dedra is brimming with conceit, that is true. She's also brimming with the knowledge of Imperial protocol, an understanding of what needs to be done in what way. She puts herself in potential harm's way. She has no idea, as she's in Luthen's territory within these walls. More so, she allows Luthen to commit seppuku just by turning around from him, which of blasted course he'll do. This is supremely unlike this show, but I believe the motivation for why it ended up the way that it did is clear enough. The elements are there. They wanted a final symbolic confrontation. They wanted Luthen to go out respectfully, on his own terms. They wanted Dedra to have this momentary closure, and then to end up in a cell block. They wanted Lonnie's whole journey to amount to something grand by the end, and it was he who first found out and passed on the knowledge of the Death Star. But they didn't want that discovery to mean too much, being limited by Rogue One. So Luthen could not be the bearer of news. Instead, it had to be Clea and Cassian, who would not be believed until later. It badly fired back on their writing, and Luthen's death ended up less than respectful by virtue of his inability to actually turn himself dead, instead having no plan and having to rely on someone else. And that someone else is, of course, Clea. In the very same episode, she sneaks all the way through an Imperial hospital. Her infiltration goes in a way suggesting the ISB have no idea that anyone will come to save or kill Axis. There is a minimal amount of guards in place. Those that are present are mostly on their own, sometimes in pairs, seemingly there to keep hospital staff and patients from entering the level with Luthen on it. They clearly are not in anticipation of an infiltration where they absolutely should be, and would be, if ISB's prior levels of collective intellect are to be followed. Thankfully for our non-evil cast, they are not. Clea sneaks straight into Luthen's room and has a leisurely goodbye scene, finally disconnecting him from life. Would have been safer to put a blaster bolt through his head, but what can you do? Then she casually escapes, with the hospital Empire troopers in hot pursuit. How? I don't know. Why has no one been guarding Axis, whose importance is self-evident? I don't know. She blew up some flying automobiles in the lower levels, and for some reason Luthen's own posse of guards leave their posts at once. It's an embarrassing sequence. Once again, both Clea and Luthen, him the second time now, are both suffering from an acute case of respectful writing, respectful being in scare quotes. You can't let that plague your story, setting it against the natural course of events. None of this should have happened. But at least Clea did manage to take one last parting look at her surrogate father and let out a tear, and we did have a long shot of Luthen somberly and peacefully dying and fading to black. It's beautiful, if only it made a lick of sense.